again, everybody. Welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And we are here today to talk about the improbable run as Indiana pulls off this incredible turnaround in college football history, maybe the most improbable turnaround in college football history, as it wins its first ever national championship under the brilliant head coach Curt Cignetti. Indiana have gone from college football's laughingstock to national champions. The Hoosiers survived last night. I did not think it would be as close as it was down the stretch, but they survived Miami 27-21 in what was, I don't like to use this word too often, but last night it was an epic national championship game. We can only hope that Super Bowls are like this. It came down. It was a brilliant chess match. It started off very slow. Indiana was very tight in the beginning, and the defenses dominated on both sides. Indiana had a 10-0 lead at the half. The Hoosiers, a long-time college football doormat, led by their brilliant coach Cignetti, they charged to a 16-0 record, completing a turnaround for the ages that I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it all season. The man is utterly brilliant. Just brilliant. And now this program is on the map. Miami were very disappointed last night. They were shameful at the end of the game with the fight between the running back and one of the Hoosier players. Miami was playing on their home turf, back in a place where they are historically familiar with, the national championship game. It was their first one in 2 decades. The Hurricanes put up an incredible fight against a talented Indiana team that had not been tested at all this playoff. But it always comes down to that one mistake, and Carson Beck, who has been much maligned, ended their hopes with that underthrown pass that was intercepted at the end of the game to make a 27-21 final. It's something that people in Indiana, and Indiana has the oldest living alumni in the country. I read that about a week ago. I don't think that they'd ever dream of seeing this. Indiana, the Hoosiers were always considered a basketball school, first and foremost. They were a basketball-mad part of the country. That is no longer the case. The 2025-26 Hoosiers on Monday wrote themselves into the football history books by pulling off the first 16-0 season in the modern era. And now their coach, their brilliant head coach, who is, the man doesn't make mistakes. And I don't know how he tops this. This seems like a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. The way they did it this year, they were utterly perfect. They were as perfect as it gets. Now, the game started off slow, as I said. Miami and Indiana traded defensive stands in the first half. Mendoza, who was brilliant again, showed his heart, showed his soul in this game, led the team on 2 scoring drives to make it 10-0 at the half. But in the second half, Miami made some adjustments, and I criticized the Miami coach for one reason. Miami was a much bigger team. Their offensive line outweighed the front of Indiana by 60 pounds or more per man. They should have pushed this team running the football in the first half, all first half long, all game long, frankly. They threw the ball way too much. But the game exploded into life in the second half. Mark Fletcher broke a 57-yard touchdown run that brought Miami within a score. But Indiana did what they always do. They answered that score a few drives later with one of the turning points of the game. It seemed like Miami was beginning to take control of the game, and it was pressuring Mendoza, and they were beating that guy up. And a lot of those hits were considered dirty. But this guy, they talk about him being goofy and dorky, and he laughs, and he believes in Jesus and all that. Let me tell you something. When you got guys who have that type of mentality, there's a reason why Constantine changed the Roman Empire into a Christian nation and into a Christian empire, because when people have God on their side, they don't fear anything. They fear nothing. And Mendoza played like a guy who feared nothing. The Hoosiers broke through on the Hurricane punt team, blocking a Dylan Joyce's punt. Indiana jumped on the loose ball in the end zone, regaining the 10-point lead at 17-7. Miami, you would think, all right, that's a terrible play. That's a heartbreaking play. Maybe they begin to feel let down. No, they didn't back down at all. And they put up an electric fourth quarter, starting with another Fletcher touchdown, cutting Indiana's lead again to just 3 points. And then came something that will live in Indiana lore forever. Indiana basketball, I remember there was a big jump shot that was made. I think it was in 1987. Oh, Christ, I forget who it was. When Bobby Knight won his third national championship. That's like Indiana lore. This, because football is a much bigger sport, this will surpass it. This incredible play by Mendoza was just outrageous to me. Let's set this up for you. This, you can argue, was the play of the game, the play of the season. This was the decider of the national championship game. It's 4th and 5, 9:27 left in the game, 17-14 Hoosiers. For your viewing pleasure, if you had not seen it, this is John Elway-esque against the Green Bay Packers. This is heart, soul. This is Jesus on the field. Here it is.
He's going to take off and run. Mendoza weaves his way first and goes diving toward the end zone. Touchdown!
Those two people you see on the screen are his parents. His mother suffers from MS, and his father has been by her side forever. If you notice, he is not standing. He's not cheering. He's not jumping up and down. He does that out of respect for her, because she cannot leave her seat. She can't leave her wheelchair. That, you hear this whole alpha male bullshit, red pill, black pill, blue pill. That is a man there. And we saw it with how his son was being knocked around from pillar to post, and he dove into that end zone, giving up his body, taking a wicked shot to the back, and putting Indiana up by double digits again, getting the first down, but more importantly, getting the touchdown. He could have slid after the 5 yards, could have done it, and nobody would have said anything. As a matter of fact, if he had slid and they scored a little later on, they probably would have taken more time off the clock. But he went for it all. Real men are dangerous. They're adventurous. They see challenges as opportunities. And this kid, I listen, forget about the fact if he's going to be a great NFL pro, who knows? But he will go down. He's going to go to the College Football Hall of Fame. That's for sure. Everybody on that Indiana team probably will. But this play here and that scene there was just, how do you not fall in love with sports after seeing that?
That's why he won the Heisman Trophy.
What a call. What a call by Curt Cignetti and the offensive coordinator, Mike Shanahan. Quarterback draw. He definitely breaks the plane, holds on to the football for a touchdown. What in 8?
Spectacular. Just spectacular. And like I said, the Canes put up a brilliant, brilliant fight. And towards the end of the game, I think it was with close to the 2-minute warning or after the 2-minute warning. It was 3rd and 1, Indiana. They could have ended the game there with another first down. Miami had one more timeout. Indiana does something that Indiana hadn't done all year, at least not when I've seen them. They commit a false start, and they're backed up, which forces them to go for the field goal to make it 27-21. It was 24-21 at the time. And at that point, I'm saying to myself, that's something I haven't seen Indiana do. They don't make mental mistakes like that. Maybe the moment is too big for them. Miami gets the ball back. And with a little over a minute to go, 3rd down and 5, I think it was, Miami gets an incomplete pass. A flag is thrown, roughing the passer on Indiana, which was a bad call, I think. And Miami get a new set of downs, a new life. And I just thought to myself at that point in time, maybe this is the end of Indiana. Those 2 penalties could have killed them. They didn't, but they could have. And those would have been the 2 penalties everybody would be talking about. Of course, Beck's the much maligned quarterback for Miami, would bring them closer, but he would throw that pick. He underthrew the ball into double coverage, and it was picked off, and that was the end of the game right there. And that was it for Indiana as they had their huge, huge night to celebrate, and they're national champions. And Curt Cignetti is going to go down in lore. It almost doesn't even matter if he wins another one. Cignetti did something that is probably unapproachable now. How do you replicate this? This was absolutely perfect. Everything was perfect about this season. They really didn't have, outside of the Penn State game, Ohio State, that was a tough game, but I don't think they trailed once in that game. Penn State was the one with that miraculous throw and that kid coming down with the catch with the foot in bounds. That was remarkable. They had all the drama. They have the Heisman Trophy winner. They have the national champion. And now they go on to look forward to next season to see if they can even come close to replicating this again. And the thing about Indiana is they're not one of these teams. Cignetti isn't one of these guys that has a gimmick offense that will be figured out in a couple of years, or this type of gimmick defense that, will be dissected and figured out. Indiana don't beat you in a special way. They beat you in a way that cannot be defended, that cannot be stopped. They beat you because they don't make mistakes. They don't turn the ball over. They don't commit penalties. They don't, they don't lose their minds or lose their heads in the big spots. They come up with a game plan. They come up with the plays. They execute those plays, and they do it over and over and over and over again. You can't beat that. You need your opponent to make at least 1 or 2 mistakes just to have a chance. They don't. They don't miss tackles. They don't have special team weaknesses. They don't get these pass interference calls or guys jumping the gun all the time on defense. They don't have that. They are drilled into discipline hell with this guy. They are a machine, a Porsche, and Cignetti is the Le Mans driver who is driving that Porsche to victory every single week. I told you this yesterday. He probably will turn it down, but if you're the Buffalo Bills, it would be irresponsible of you not to give this guy a call and not to offer him a package that he would have to consider. I don't care how much money he makes in Indiana. It doesn't matter. He's making $10 million a year in Indiana. Hey, we'll give you 20. And maybe he tears it down. Who knows? He says he's a college football coach, and there is a difference. Urban Meyer is one of the most brilliant coaches I've ever seen. He's a college football coach. He couldn't do it in the NFL. Neither could Saban. There are a lot of guys, lots of guys who were successful in college who couldn't do it in the NFL. Lou Holtz is another big guy. Maybe he's better off staying there. But the pressure will be immense on him next year. Immense. To try and replicate what Indiana did this year. But kudos to them. A brilliant game last night. He coached a brilliant game. They were tight in the beginning. Miami were much more physical. They had the better athletes, but it just goes to show you don't have to have the great athletes all over the place. You just have to have a great unit. The Patriots always had that. The Patriots didn't have Hall of Fame guys. They had, it was Belichick, Brady, and Vinatieri. That was it. But their defense was a brilliant unit, coached up like you wouldn't believe. And they were just smarter than everybody else. Belichick was dirty. Don't get me wrong. But I like that. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. But they were also smarter than everyone else. They never committed the turnover. They never committed that penalty. And that's why the Patriots won so many championships. The 49ers, same thing. But the 49ers were different because the 49ers had great athletes. 49ers had the great safety. They had the all-time epic, great god of a wide receiver in Rice. They had the greatest quarterback of all time in Joe Montana. They had the first 1,000-yard runner, 1,000-yard receiver in Roger Craig. They had talent all over the place. That's why they were unstoppable back in that golden era. But Indiana, they don't have. How many guys in Indiana are going to get drafted in the first 2-3 rounds? Mendoza probably will go to the Raiders. Poor guy. But outside of that, who else? Who knew who Curt Cignetti was before this year? It'll be interesting to see how this team goes about it next year. It'll be interesting to see if he does receive any phone calls from teams in the NFL or from bigger college teams. That's not out of the realm of possibility either. That could be another interesting little tidbit. Maybe some of these big teams want that. Because when you win a national championship and you do it this way perfectly, all these players, they want to play for you. Because they want to go to the guy who they feel gives them the best chance to win. Does Indiana have the type of money to spend on these free agent players? Because that's what they basically are. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what Indiana does in the future. But congratulations to them. They were utterly brilliant. They were just flawless. They were, dare I say, I was thinking about teams that were on this level of greatness. The 84 49ers, and I'm not comparing pro teams to college teams, but the 84 49ers were just about the most perfect team you'd ever see. They lost on a missed field goal by Ray Wersching in 1984. They lost to the Steelers 17-14. The 89 49ers lost 2 games, one by a fumble by Tom Rathman, who hadn't fumbled in, I think, 200 carries, and one of the worst illegal motion calls ever seen by man, which negated a pick 6 against the Green Bay Packers, which led the Packers to upset the 49ers, the last loss they had in 1989, before the Niners rampaged the league and then won the Super Bowl in the greatest Super Bowl performance in history, beating the Broncos 55-10. Baseball-wise, the 98 Yankees reminded me a lot of this team because they didn't have superstars. They were just a core unit of guys who were gritty, smart, tough, never say die, and they just wore you down. They just wore you down. That 98 team, I mean, they have Hall of Famers, obviously, Jeter and Mariano and such, but they weren't loaded with this unbelievable talent. They're not like the Dodgers are today. This team is right up there with some of the greatest teams I've ever seen. Now, unfortunately, the greatest team that I've ever seen in any sport are the 1989 AC Milan teams, who were just, I mean, they were invincible. Invincible in Italy when Serie A was the greatest sports league in the world. Invincible in the Champions League when they embarrassed teams like there was no tomorrow. It was very, very, very hard time, believe me. From 1980 to 2007 wasn't a very good time to be an Inter Milan fan like I was. But kudos to Indiana. Kudos to Coach Cignetti, who did one of the greatest jobs I've ever seen in sports. And we'll see what Indiana has in store for us next year. Of course, we have the big football this weekend, the conference championship games. Pats are probably going to be favored in this game because they're coming in much healthier than the Broncos are. And I haven't seen the lines because I'm not a big gambler. I'm going to assume right now that the Seahawks are the early favorites on the Rams. I'm going to wait until Friday, of course, to do that show for you. Tomorrow, this week, we're going to try to talk about what's going on in Minnesota, the whole Greenland shit with Trump, which I think is ridiculous. It's a mad, mad, mad world. It's a petty world. And right now, if you like sports, you get to escape sport. You get to escape the madness of the real world for a little while. And that's my 2 cents. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Remember, my friends, Satan is always busy, but we beat him last night. Be a man and have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. And remember, if it ends in an ism, it's a mental disorder. We'll see you later.